I was preparing for this sermon, I knew that there was one of two examples I was going to be talking about when it came to telling the truth this morning. I could either talk about Monty Teo and the imaginary made-up girlfriend, or I could talk about Lance Armstrong. And as I thought about it, I realized I would be talking about Lance Armstrong. You see, I feel like I have kind of lived this journey with Lance. Not that I ever rode in the Tour de France, and not that I lied about the last 13 years of my life, but my father and I would watch Lance Armstrong during the summers, as we would watch him on the Tour de France. And my dad is a cyclist, and I have these great memories of watching the United States Postal Service team riding to 7 consecutive victories with my dad. And it was a big day when, over Christmas, my dad let me know that he officially unliked Lance Armstrong's Facebook page. It was a big deal. We might have talked about, if this was 2 years ago, the amazing story that is Lance Armstrong. We would have talked about him beating the odds in the mid-90s by beating cancer, and how he used that fame and experience to launch the Live Strong Foundation to encourage other cancer victims and patients in their journeys. We probably would have even have had the yellow bracelets to prove it. We would have maybe talked about how he was a bronze medalist, how he had 1 to 7 consecutive Tour de France victories. But then allegations started mounting. Allegations and accusations that had always been there, that perhaps Lance Armstrong's athletic feats weren't 100% honest. EPO and blood doping, 2 ways of upping a body's red blood cell count, cortisone and other chemical enhancements, all meant to boost performance, started piling up. Former teammates and friends started naming names, accusing Lance of lying and cheating his way to victory. Federal investigations were started and closed. Armstrong testified before a grand jury, all the while maintaining his innocence and throwing everyone else who accused him underneath the bus. And then most recently, another case was opened. Proof that couldn't be fought or explained away, years of systematic lying and cheating. Armstrong was stripped of his 7 Tour de France victories, his Olympic medal. He was banned from cycling. And as truth came to light, Lance Armstrong quit fighting. Instead, he did what many people end up doing. He went on Oprah. Let's take a look.
So let's start with the questions that people around the world have been waiting for you to answer. And for now, I'd just like a yes or no.
Okay.
Okay? This whole conversation, we have a lot of time, will be about the details. Yes or no? Did you ever take banned substances to enhance your cycling performance?
Yes.
Yes or no? Was one of those banned substances EPO?
Yes.
Did you ever blood dope or use blood transfusions to enhance your cycling performance?
Yes.
Did you ever use any other banned substances like testosterone, cortisone, or human growth hormone?
Yes.
Yes or no? In all 7 of your Tour de France victories, did you ever take banned substances or blood dope?
Yes.
In your opinion, was it humanly possible to win the Tour de France without doping? 7 times in a row.
Not enough.
So when did you first start doping?
We're done with the yes and no's.
We're done with the yes and no's.
You know, I suppose earlier in my career there was cortisone, and then the EPO generation began.
Began when?
For me or
For you?
mid-90s.
Mid-90s. For 13 years, you didn't just deny it, you brazenly and defiantly denied everything you just admitted just now. So why now admit it?
That's the best question. It's the most logical question. I don't know that I have a great answer. I will start my answer by saying that this is too late. It's too late for probably most people. And that's my fault. You know, I view this situation as one big lie that I repeated a lot of times. And as you said, it wasn't as if I just said no and I moved off.
Right. You were defiant.
Oh, yes.
You called other people liars.
I understand. And while I've lived through this process, especially the last 2 years, 1 year, 6 months, 3 months, I know the truth. The truth isn't what was out there. The truth isn't what I said. And now it's gone. This story was so perfect for so long. And I mean that as I try to take myself out of the situation and I look at it. You overcome the disease. You win the Tour de France 7 times. You have a happy marriage. You have children. It's just this mythic, perfect story.
Yes.
And it wasn't true.
And that wasn't true.
And that was not true.
I love how when Lance Armstrong is asked why he's coming clean now and he doesn't have a good answer, he dodges the fact that he does have a good answer. It's pretty obvious. He couldn't lie anymore. He finally got caught in a place he couldn't accuse or wriggle himself out of, and he doesn't say it, but he came clean because he had to. The truth was out, and this was the only way that he could save some face. But I really love what he says at the end. I watched this confession. It's not an apology in any sense of the word, but it's certainly a confession with bated breath. I almost held my breath through some parts of it, but at the end, when he talks about the mythical, perfect story of the life that he was leading, I actually think that's probably the most truthful part of his entire confession. Granted, it was a lie, a big, fat, phony lie, but there was something true in that statement that the story of the life he was leading was so perfect for so long. And it was. But now he's paying the price. The story is no longer perfect, but then again, it never was. And neither are ours. We aren't Lance Armstrong, but he isn't that different than you or me. We all struggle with this problem with dishonesty. Studies show that we begin the ability to lie effectively, which is a really wonderful turn of phrase, lie effectively, right around the time that we're able to develop effective speech. No, I don't have kids, but I asked some of my friends who did have kids, and they agreed. As soon as children start being able to speak effectively, they are also learning how to lie. The problem of dishonesty infiltrates all of our lives in big and small ways. Our heart condition has something wrong with it. Not all lies are Lance Armstrong-sized lies. Not even all of them are as big as writing off more than you should on your taxes or cheating on a final. Lies can be so small that we forget that they're lies in the beginning. Consider some of these lies that we tell on a daily basis. Maybe some of them are familiar to you. Lies like, it wasn't me. I'm fine. I never got the message. This will only take 5 minutes. I never said that. She's only a friend. Your baby looks so beautiful. I'll call you. No hard feelings. My phone must have died. I never saw that text message. It's not me, it's you. And this is the one I will admit to. I do this all the time. I check yes when iTunes asks me if I have read the terms and conditions. I've never read the terms and conditions. Never. We've got a big problem with dishonesty. It infiltrates our lives on every level, from the versions of ourselves that we put out on the internet to what we say to our loved ones, to the things that we do when our backs are against the wall. I think we lie because we're scared. We lie to save face, to get out of consequences, to avoid trouble, but at the heart of it all, we are afraid. Afraid of what might happen, afraid that we aren't good enough. I believe that there's heart. At the heart of every lie, there's fear. This issue is where our walk through the Sermon on the Mount takes us this morning. I'd invite you to go ahead and pull out your Bibles, turn to Matthew 5. Carolyn read it so well this morning, but it'd be great for us to read it again now. You may remember that we've been covering these life lessons in Matthew's account of the Sermon on the Mount, this long sermon early in Jesus' ministry. Jesus is recorded by taking the world's standards for success or a blessed life and flipping them on their heads, essentially saying that what the world despises is what God values. Then Jesus had strong words about loving our enemies and dealing with our anger. And then, today, still in chapter 5, verses 33 through 37, Jesus has some difficult words to say about our words and our honesty. The section begins with a pretty familiar phrase from Jesus. He says, "You've heard it said, ... And then he says something that his audience has been taught, in this case something about oaths. And then Jesus will go on to say in a couple of verses, "But I tell you, ... wherein Jesus blows their mind with a new interpretation or teaching on the same subject. This is how people taught in those days. The Jewish people had the Torah, what we would call the Old Testament, as their central go-to text. They also had lots of teachers or rabbis giving their own take or interpretation on those laws. So depending on whose teaching you followed, those Jewish laws and teachings might get lived out in different ways. Rabbi Daniel might teach you something than Rabbi Moses, who might teach you something different than Rabbi Jesus. So what were these Jewish people being taught about honesty? We see beginning in verse 33, "Do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows you've made. But I tell you," here's Jesus flipping it on its head, "do not swear an oath at all, either by heaven, for it's God's throne, or by earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it's the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black. All you need to do is simply say yes or no. Anything beyond that comes from the evil one." Seems like Jesus' audience didn't just have a problem with being honest, they were taking oaths. Almost a legal word that they were calling on people or things as witnesses to ensure that their promises would be fulfilled. It's the difference between saying, "I will take out the trash," and "as surely as the sun rises in the east each morning, I will take out the trash." Which one are you going to believe more? Probably the one that's as sure as the rising sun in the east. They were using their words to magnify what it was that they were going to do. And the teaching of the day wasn't just that these oaths were bad. If you look at 33, verse 33, the teachers were mostly just trying to get people to actually do what they said that they would do in the first place. But Jesus takes it an extra step. Eugene Peterson's The Message paraphrases Jesus' words by saying, "And don't say anything you don't mean. You only make things worse when you lay down the smokescreen of pious talk, saying, 'I'll pray for you,' and never doing it. 'God be with you,' and not meaning it. You don't make your words true by embellishing them with religious lace. In making your speech sound more religious, it becomes less true. Just say yes or no." Dressing up something with flowery language. While most of us, I think, probably don't swear by Jerusalem or by the hairs on our head, we probably do have things that make our words seem more truthful, which is in part what Jesus is addressing here. Maybe you have your own turn of phrase. Mine is, "It's on my list." I literally have a physical list of things I hope to accomplish in a given week. But in reality, I have more things on my list than on my actual list. And my list is really a list of good intentions that might exist more in my head than actually down on paper. So if someone comes up and asks me to do something, and I say that it's on my list, 70% of the time, it was already on my list, physically. But sometimes, though, I say it to try to make you feel that I'm actually going to do it. Actually, I say it to make myself feel like I'm actually going to do it. I promise myself, my coworkers, my friends, God, that I'm going to get to it. Really, it's on the list. What's the list in your life? I'm sure that we all have them. Things that we say to convince ourselves that we're actually going to carry through with what we say that we're going to do. The Israelites had heard it said that if they dressed up their promises with fancy language, their words would be more true. I wonder what we have heard. I wonder what we've heard about honesty in our own words. Many of us from a young age are taught to tell the truth, but as we grow older, what that actually means changes. In our culture, we're taught many other things about words, aren't we? I think that at some point on his journey, Lance Armstrong was taught that you do everything you can do to win, even if it means breaking the rules. Maybe some of us are taught that white lies are okay, if they spare someone's feelings or keep us from feeling awkward or uncomfortable in the process. Maybe some of us have been taught that our honesty only applies when someone's looking, or when rules are written down, or things are actually on our list. I think many of us are told that it's okay to say or do anything you need to do to get ahead as long as you don't get called out for it. In our culture, in our world today, it seems like honesty is a free-for-all, more than we may want to admit to ourselves. And at this point, we've been taught that our yeses and nos aren't good enough. Jesus wants to reassure us. We must let our yes be yes and our no be no. We must tell the truth. That's at the heart of it. In the midst of all of the flowery language, Jesus cuts right down to the bone. And whatever you say, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Anything else is from the evil one. It's tougher than it sounds to tell the truth, isn't it? Our problem with honesty is so far-reaching. Some of us with lies that have gone on our entire lives, it's hard to toe the line that Jesus talks about here. We've got a lot invested in these stories of ours. A lot gets invested in maintaining lies, in maintaining appearances, and not getting caught. It can become, and often does become, a way of life. We live lives of deception, living one way at work, one way at school, one way on our Facebook account, one way at home, one way at the office, almost assuredly another way behind the wheel. We live fractured lives. That choosing the truth, choosing to tell the truth requires a few things from us. Telling the truth requires honesty. We have to admit that we have a lying problem. It seems a little redundant to say, tell the truth, choose honesty, but there you go. We have to be honest about our problem. It's time for each of us to stop maintaining these fake stories, stop pretending that there's no problem, when really we are all wrecked by our inability to tell the truth. If we aren't honest about our problem, that out of fear, we waste time that we could be spending loving God and loving others and doing something of significance in the world, we spend our time and our energy maintaining these false facades, these false stories about ourselves in big ways or in small ways. In the end, I think if we aren't honest about our problem, we aren't honest about the fact that we are afraid that we're not good enough. We're not good enough for the God who created us. We're not good enough for the people that we are in relationships with. We're believing a lie about ourselves. Telling the truth requires that we say what we mean. Lying kills relationships. It does. The most frustrating part for me of any 30-minute sitcom is when someone spends 29 minutes maintaining a lie that they just could have told the truth about in the first place. And it happens all the time in our lives. We lie. I wonder what would happen in our relationships if they were marked with words that humbly and honestly said what we meant. I think if we think back to the most important relationships in our lives, the ones that do work on us in the soul level, it is people like that who speak the truth in love. Hard words and encouraging words in our lives. For me, as one of my professors from Bethel, Karen McKinney. I was her TA for 2 years. I had countless classes with her. And Karen is someone who does not hesitate to speak the truth in love. Karen is someone who, to this day, I can drop in at Bethel and talk with her, and she has encouraging words, but she will also call me on my stuff. She is someone who sees through the lies that I sometimes try to build up around my life about how things are doing, and she cuts me down. And I have not always liked this about our relationship, but it's one of the reasons why I continue to go back to talk with her, because she is someone who is honest with me. She says what she means. So I know that when she says that she cares about me, it's true. Just as much as when she told me I used too many dashes in my papers when I was one of her students, that was true too. She tells the truth in more than just my grammar and punctuation, but Karen is someone in my life who has done soul work on me because of her faith in God. She speaks the truth. How amazing would it be if we were able to be those people in someone else's lives because we were willing to tell the truth. Not to cut them down, not to harm them, but we were willing to say what we meant in love. If this week we chose one relationship and spoke only what we meant into that relationship, that might be a scary thing. But imagine the change that might come. You might find that you would have to slow down. You might have to listen more. You might have to commit to less. You might have to be honest about what you need or what you don't need. But we might find that those relationships grow and flourish and change. Telling the truth, though, also requires that we do what we say. I think one of the most radical outcomes of taking Jesus at his word in these verses may actually be how it would force us to do what we say. It would force us to slow down, to do less. If we only say what we mean, both in our words and in our commitment to action, then what we carry out 9 times out of 10 is going to be what we say we will do. Imagine a world where people who are committed to following Christ tell the truth in love, and then say, do I actually do what they say that they're going to do? That's a movement that might actually change the world. Something might actually happen when honesty gets real. It gets a little scary, and it gets a little exciting, and things start happening. But letting our yes be yes and our no be no starts with getting honest. Not honest like Lance Armstrong was honest. I watched both parts of that interview. He didn't show remorse. Even now, he's full of rationalizations. I actually kind of believe that he would continue to play the system had he not gotten caught. But what if we are honest and repentant about our problem with dishonesty? The good news is that we can come clean, that we worship a God who has our back. We worship a God who calls us back into a relationship with him, saying, I know you have a problem with dishonesty, and I accept that and I forgive you. Let's start again new. Our first step is to confess. And this morning, we have this opportunity to go to God in prayer, to confess, to start again with a clean slate. I think that's what's so powerful about the idea of confession. We end up back here time and again. Our dishonesty, our problem with lying is going to continue to be a problem in this building and out of this building. So it's so important that we tune our hearts to be people who come back to the Lord time and again, recognizing our need for grace, our forgiveness, and this reminder that we don't go through it alone. If you look around, we have one another, but we also have our Heavenly Father who calls us back to him time and again. So as we go into prayer, there will be a few moments of silence. This is our time to look at your life, to manage silence like Roger prayed earlier today. I encourage you to use this time to look at your life and reflect. Where are there marks, be they big or small, of dishonesty? Where's one relationship this week where you can practice telling the truth? What's something that you're actually going to follow through on, that maybe has been on your list for far too long? And then, after some silence, I'll invite you to join me and pray the words that will be on the screen. Words of confession that we'll pray aloud together. So will you please join me as we go to God in prayer?